What I like about this part of town is it's where you see kind of the drop off from the likes of O'Connell Street, Henry Street. This is where town starts getting quiet and you start moving kind of into what was more of a residential area. And like where we are now, Wolftown Park is probably one of the first kind of big open spaces that you get in the city. So the mood completely shifts as you come into this part of town. And the ghost stories associated with this area. I mean, you've got the Jervis Street Shopping Centre now, which of course was the hospital. And that's originally from 1718. So, I mean, it was quite an old building and it was the hospital of charity. But back in 2008, one of the newsreaders from Today FM, Bernie, just happened to mention to one of her co-workers how she'd heard a female voice singing a lullaby. And as she tried to find out where it was and walked towards it, it faded out. And she presumed it was just a low radio, and she walked back to her seat, it got louder again. And once she mentioned that, it opened it up, and people started talking about the stories. And people came forward with stories from all over the Jervis Centre. Staff from Marks and Spencer's, security staff in the building, Tesco's. They all started describing the same things, which was they'd seen the ghost of a nurse in kind of period nurse's uniform walking through. But there was other stories then associated, well, not always the same girl. Some of them would actually interact with people. One of the things is that there was a guy passing through the corridor down towards where the toilets are, beside Burger King. As he was walking down there, it was early enough in the morning, he saw a woman standing in the corridor and just kind of mumbling, but he couldn't hear her, what she was saying. He could just see the lips were moving. And as he got closer to her, she turned and she looked straight at him, and she just turned around and then disappeared in front of him. Which is very strange to have something interact, because with a lot of these kind of old buildings, people say that it's what's called a residual haunting, which is just a replay, a recording, playing over and over again. So to actually have like a sentient kind of consciousness reacting with people is very, very rare. But the whole area, I mean, you've got the hospital there, you have the church, which is obviously a bar and restaurant now, and then where we are here with the headstones, it's Wolftown Park now, but it was St. Mary's graveyard. And that was used up until 1855. But one of the big names to be buried in the graveyard was Lord Nordbury, who of course sentenced Robert Emmet to be hung, drawn and quartered. He was a hanging judge and he was hated. It's actually said that he, just through corruption and bribery, that he got the position he did as Chief Justice. And one of the people he was said to have sentenced was a young man from Blanchardstown for sheep stealing. And man, of course, was said to have been innocent, and his wife died a few months later, heartbroken. And on her deathbed, it said that she cursed Lord Norbury and said that his soul would never be at rest. Now, he was in the ground where we are now, and his ghost is associated with this area up as far as Cabra. It's said that people hear the dragging of chains, and this was his punishment. The thing about the chains is that our own blood tastes and smells of iron. This is a very old idea. People actually believe that the metal was the blood of the planet, and it was a punishment for an impure soul to put on these chains so that the spirit would never be at rest. One of the variations on the ghost story of Lord Norbury is that he was said to have been turned into a black dog. Black dogs in ghost stories, in Irish ghost stories, got referred to as shucks. They were a large black dog, and it's been heard that the dog dragging the chains up this road beside us here, and as I said, up as far as Cabra, and it's been seen by people. Large black figures being seen in here. Actually, one man I spoke to had seen a black figure in here in the 70s, as recently as the 70s. But the building behind us, where I actually work, which is obviously the Leprechaun Museum now, used to be Twilfit House. Well, it is Twilfit House, but it came from the fact that it was a corsetry factory, so it got the name Twilfit. And I've spoken to people about their stories from back in the 50s and 60s who worked in there, and then up until the last kind of 25 years, and they all share the same stories. And one of them is of a woman who blows on men's ears in the stairwell inside, described as being quite a flirtatious kind of character. There's nothing malicious about it at all, and I've spent many kind of late nights in the museum myself. Some of it has a darker side to it. There is a large black figure seen on the opposite side of this wall out in our courtyard. The figure is said to be like kind of well over 6 foot, but the lower half of the legs are actually below ground level, and you see that he just passes through the wall into what would have been the graveyard.